Hello everyone, welcome once again to another segment of the newspaper Hindu Explainer series. I am Kushagra Goel and very warm greetings from Law Prep Tutorial. So, there were some doubts that you all had from yesterday and in general regarding the newspaper analysis. Alright, one was how to make notes from the newspaper. Alright, so let's wait for CLAT 2021 to get over. We'll do another segment of how to make notes. You can also find a video on the Law Prep channel itself about note making. Alright, however, we will do it once again for all of you, all the new viewers for CLAT 2022 and 2023 and beyond. Alright, so on that note, there was one more doubt that another student had was regarding, especially, do you need to read regional sections of the newspaper? Now, my first answer is no. Alright, specific region, specific news is not relevant from CLAT perspective. Alright, understand this. This newspaper series is to make you highlight what news you need to know, especially for your current affairs in the CLAT paper. Alright, you don't, so the newspaper focuses on only those kinds of news. It's not about what is happening in the country, it's not a news portal. Alright, so we'll separate it from that. Another, then why don't we need to read region specific news? Because they are not asked in a national paper. Alright, we are preparing for a national examination. Regional news, until they are of national significance, do not matter. Alright, on that note, another doubt that was there was who is the new president of Iran. The new president of Iran is Ibrahim Raisi. Alright, he is the new president. Alright, the current one is Hassan Rouhani and he will be replaced by Ibrahim Raisi. Alright, on that note, we'll move on with today's newspaper analysis. So on the front page, there have been more details being divulged on a daily basis regarding the Pegasus spyware. Political opposition parties who have been the subject of this spyware have called for a joint parliamentary committee to investigate the findings. The government has denied that no such illegal snooping can ever happen in India. However, this does not explain has the government itself done it. Alright, okay, but see, all this is political posturing. We have discussed what Pegasus is. Alright, and we don't need to go more until and unless there is some decision that has been taken regarding this. Will the Supreme Court take a suo motu cognizance of it? Alright, all of that is not that relevant for us. On the right hand side, more details. When in 2019 the government in Karnataka felt that there were allegations of snooping, then also. Alright, then 2/3 of Indians have antibodies based on the new Sero survey. Sero survey is a random sampling survey to determine the position of antibodies in an individual. Based on that, ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research, comes up with findings about how to go about it. Alright, how many people are still at risk, alright, and how many people have already contracted COVID in some way or the other. 1/3 of the Indian population, nearly 40 crore people, are still vulnerable to the COVID infection. Alright, so there is a humongous amount of population that is still at risk because of COVID-19. 40 crores, 1% mortality means a huge amount of people are still susceptible to even death because of COVID-19. Alright, then the government yesterday gave a response in Rajya Sabha claiming that no person in the country during the COVID wave has passed away because of oxygen shortage, that the government had taken multiple steps to enhance the supply of medical oxygen in the country during, alright, and that no one passed away because of lack of oxygen due to in COVID-19 mortalities. Alright, how true is this figure is dependent upon each day. Newspapers have come up about how governments have underreported deaths. So all those deaths that were not even reported in official findings could also be all of this. Alright, then moving on, more confirmation. So MLA Suvendu Adhikari, who is the leader of opposition, has claimed that his government in the central does have access to all the call records. All right, so all of this not relevant for us from CLAT preparation point of view. All right, so moving on to the editorial segment. All right, so all these daily news related to different regions also, unless they are related to a judgment of a particular high court, we don't really have to go into them. So moving on to the editorial segment. All right, so the main editorial Pegasus is India's Watergate movement. What was Watergate? Watergate was a scandal undertaken by Richard Nixon where he had spied upon his Democratic rivals. We had talked about it yesterday. Senator Frank Church had given a response there. If this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know such a capability of this technology. This was back in 1970s. Today, governments even more so have far more power to regulate or pre-plan what someone is trying to, if anyone has a protest in mind. So in that regard, this editorial claims that if these findings are true, if opposition leaders have been spied upon, if constitutional authorities such as election commissioners, such as Supreme Court judges, all right, if they have been spied upon, this shows that there is a huge use of technological apparatus, not particularly for national security, but to advance one's political interest. A person who advances his political interest or avoids any opposition at all is a dictator, right? So, in that regard, democracies strive on opposition and the governance and the government being held accountable by their opposition. If there is no opposition, then there is no differentiation between a Chinese government or the Communist Party of China and the Indian state. All right. So this editorial then moves on to say that there are laws that the government already has, and there have been reported misuse of laws for personal use. One of them is the Snoop Gate, under which the current Home Minister of India had been involved in Gujarat. All right, he had used his access to ability to tap into phones related to a family in Gujarat. This petition was withdrawn by the family later on. However, this did not mean that the minister had not done an activity like this. So this shows that their governments and authorities, political authorities, are capable of actually having access to do surveillance. The exception is national security, but the editorial says that, see, there is the risk of all this being used actually for the purposes of spying and keeping a check on your opposition or for personal use. All right, so then it moves on to highlight how post the Watergate scam there were some measures that were taken in America to avoid such a thing, especially to involve judicial and parliamentary oversight to such surveillance and spying. However, in India, only the executive had such access. That is, for example, if a state government has to do, the chief secretary, the home secretary, and the concerned minister need to give consent. All right, and then the DG police of that particular district can have access to phone records. Similarly, at the central government level, also the home minister, the prime minister, the national security advisor, they can be involved to ensure if they want to spy upon someone or not. All right, so there is a executive mechanism, but there is no oversight. That is, in case the executive or an individual is using it for their personal means, there is no way to verify or ask them why you are doing this or what good or what threat to national security come out of it, you spying on someone. All right, then on the left hand side, spy in hand government must come clean on the issues raised by revelations of phone surveillance. If 1000 phones of Indian people have been spied upon by a government agency, there are two possibilities: either the government is hiding, or two, the government is itself unaware that its own agency has done such a thing. either of those possibilities needs to be investigated upon, because if this has not been granted approval by the competent authority, then this is illegal surveillance. And in any matter, hacking into a person's personal life is a violation of their fundamental rights. So the second one, spy in hand, calls for the government to come clean on it. Then on the left hand side, sharing during scarcity. This is about new water projects that have come up in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, where the two governments collectively decided on coming up on this. All right, policy measure not relevant for us. Then on the right hand side, a thread to grasp in the Kitex story. What is this about? Kitex is a Kitex is a company for garment export. All right, they had slowly moved into politics by fielding their own candidates in panchayat election. However, this did not let the Kerala government to budge into their demand. So Kitex group migrated to Telangana. When they did that, there were different states who were in competition to actually make the Kitex groups establish their factory in that particular region. The editorial brings out the competition between capitalism and democracy. One, it points out that how each geographical area has its own needs, all right, and there are certain democratic principles with which they abide by. However, capitalism and the idea of modern capitalism is all about being away from regulation. Cryptocurrencies are a prime example of how capitalism does not want to be regulated by anything. Cryptocurrency is a non regulated financial resource where people can park their money and there is no regulation by any sovereign authority. The current change by G7 countries to prevent base erosion and profit shifting is primarily to rein in the modern capitalist or multinational companies where they want to avoid regulation at all cost. The Kitex group later on said that Indian capitalist companies should start taking steps towards being or taking over the political system and mold the political system based on their demand or the need of their business. All right. Then the editorial moves on to say how these capitalism or modern capital wants to move towards a single window where things are relaxed. They have little to almost no compliances to make. They would move their capital to countries where labor is cheap, labor reforms are weak, all right, environmental regulation is lax, and would profit from there. Whenever things are curtailed there or laws become stringent, they want to move to a new area. Something similar that happened in Kerala to Telangana, because in Kerala the worker rights are far more secured. They wanted to move out of Kerala to Telangana. So this says that right now democracies need to move away from absolute competition and set out a basic ground, a level playing field, which would lead to a more sustainable development for everyone. All right, it's an important article in general to understand the economic policies, especially related to the new one that has the G7 decided. The G7 minimum corporate tax is a very important area. Why is it important? Because it is going to be adopted by India at the G20 summit this year and by the OECD countries. So almost 160 countries will adopt it. I haven't highlighted it because you may understand things without it also. However, it is still a very important read. Then moving on the left hand side, India's equity market bubble may burst soon. India's stock exchange has been growing at a rapid pace independent of the growth of the Indian economy. This is expected to go down or become rational as the growth forecast of Indian economy is going to go down. So in that regard, this is the editorial talking about financial resources and prediction. Then on the right hand side, accepting radical otherness, that this is a political theory article about why of different areas related to. It's not that relevant for us if unless you are interested in political theory. Then on the left hand side, Biden's political pick, Eric Garcetti, who has been the new ambassador in India now by United States. And this is talking about how his importance and his primacy closer to Joe Biden itself is going to be important in a symbol of closer ties between India and US. Then on the right hand side, this is a data point which says that India's TFR or total fertility rate has been going down significantly, in the sense that India, without even having these coercive population control measures such as two child policy or disincentivizing government jobs or reducing your social security benefits, doesn't really reduce TFR, but educating women, creating awareness about contraceptives actually does result in this. India's average TFR has been going down from approximately closer to 3% to now 2%. That is the ideal level of replacement level. All right. Most of the states have also reported a drop in their TFR already. All right. With Uttar Pradesh and Bihar actually being the only exception with really high TFR of 3%. All right. Then moving on the other national news, political news not relevant for us. Then the Supreme Court delivered, the full bench of Supreme Court delivered a judgment striking down an amendment that was brought in by the government. The 97th Amendment Act had introduced Part 9B to the Constitution. It was in relation to cooperative societies. The Supreme Court struck down the amendment because one, it infringed upon the powers of state legislatures, and secondly, it has not been brought or ratification by states has not been provided. So for two reasons, this amendment act has been declared unconstitutional. It deals with cooperative societies. Recently only Indian government established a Ministry of Cooperation. This amendment strikes down and says that cooperative societies within the state are an exclusive realm of state government and not the union government. So the union government making a law by amending the constitution is a wrongful act. Judicial review is the method to by the judiciary and a system of check and balances in India to rein in legislative and executive powers in the Indian polity. All right. Then moving on, apart from this, more and more protest in 2019. Also, House panel that was then headed by Shashi Tharoor had wanted to discuss the Pegasus breach. The first reports about Pegasus being used in India had surfaced it way back in 2019, but then also the government did not do or even want any discussion about it. All right. Then apart from this, nothing of real note for us. Then on the world news, all right, couple of news that becomes important. First, terror attack on Kabul presidential palace undertaken by ISIS, Islamic State. The one reason why US had invaded Afghanistan in the first place was to ensure that the territory is not a brewing ground for terrorism. But that is exactly what is happening as Taliban gains more and more territorial control in the country. All right, this shows that this region needs to be or needs to have a multilateral discussion to ensure that the threat of terrorism actually doesn't spill over into other territories. Then on the right hand side, China along with other countries, that is Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, have created a new forum, that is China South Asia Countries Emergency Supplies Reserve, a poverty elevation and cooperative development center set up in China in July 8th. What is this purpose? This is especially after India was supposed to supply vaccines to the regional countries, all right, under our mechanism of COVAX and vaccine method. But because of COVID-19 and Indian government failing to plan and place advance orders for the vaccines, we had a dire shortage of vaccines. And the countries that had delivered first dose of COVID shield vaccine, then had to scramble to other areas for basic necessity and especially vaccines. India has continued to impose a vaccine export ban. Bangladesh was the primary sufferer of this. They had even made advance payments and yet they have not received the vaccines. They had made more payment for vaccines than the Indian government had placed with Serum Institute, who is the manufacturer of Covishield. And therefore, now China has filled in the vacuum that has been left by India, and India and its two close allies, that is Bhutan and Maldives, all three countries have been left out. This forum is also being seen as a mechanism to dilute the role of SAARC. SAARC is anyway a non-starter, alright. Most of the cooperation in SAARC doesn't really happen because the regional grouping is always mired into conversation about India-Pakistan relationship, alright. So the name of the grouping and its purpose becomes important. Then Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, also successfully completed a space flight of 11 minutes. He, in his Blue Origin, the space company he has founded, the space rocket, that is New Shepard, took off from West Texas on the 52nd Apollo moon landing. Apollo 11 moon landing was the first landing of humans on moon. Alright, on the 52nd anniversary, Jeff Bezos, he began the service of space tourism. Alright, recently Virgin Galactic had also done it a week ago, and now he also undertook the journey along with 4 other individuals. Alright, then election results in Peru are in. Pedro Castillo, the left oriented candidate, has been declared the winner by a margin of 44,000 votes. The election results come 6 weeks after the counting of the votes began. There was a threat by his opponent, that is Fujimori, claiming that voter fraud had taken place, but all those reports have been denied. Alright, then moving on the economic and sporting side, nothing of real note for us. Alright, more and more spotlight on the Olympic Games as they begin. On that note, I'll conclude for the day. 2 stories that become important. First, 97th Amendment being struck down by the Supreme Court, and secondly, the Pegasus and the laws under which legal snooping is allowed, however the limitations of it also. On that note, thank you so much. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like the work that we are doing, and subscribe to the channel if you are new to it. On that note, thank you so much. See you tomorrow.